The story begins with Kevin Kelly being sent home from school after getting into trouble once again. When he arrives, his mother, Mary, immediately scolds him. But just as Kevin tries to explain what happened, he suddenly hears laughter coming from somewhere in the room. Before he can figure out where it's coming from, Kevin wakes up inside a car. It turns out the whole thing was just a dream. The boy is actually on vacation with his parents and his older sister, Katie, as they make their way to Maloney State Park. The trip was Mary's idea. Since her husband Tom was laid off from his job, she has been working full-time as a mediator. Now, she hopes the family can finally spend some quality time together. Unfortunately, Kevin isn't impressed with the cabin where they'll be staying. And to make matters worse, Mary has taken away his cell phone as punishment for getting suspended from school. With no other choice, Kevin puts his belongings away in his room and starts exploring the cabin. While looking around, he accidentally knocks an old cassette tape out of a closet. On its cover is a creepy-looking doll from an old TV show called Puka. After the family finishes unpacking and has dinner together, everyone goes to bed. But when Kevin returns to his room, he notices the tape lying on the floor. He shows it to his father, who is surprised to see a VHS tape since the format has been out of production for so many years. Kevin immediately wants to watch it, but there isn't a VHS player in the cabin. Tom is too tired to go looking for one around the park, so Kevin goes to ask his mother for help. Unfortunately, Mary is busy setting up her computer for a work meeting. Kevin keeps insisting until Mary finally goes to ask the neighbors. There, she finds the park caretaker gathering firewood. When Mary asks if there's a VHS player somewhere nearby, the woman points toward a shed at the top of the mountain. She says Kevin might find one inside, but warns him to be careful. According to local legends, the mountain is home to a group of evil fairies. Unlike the friendly creatures from fairy tales, these fairies are supposedly dangerous and are known for devouring unsuspecting tourists. Mary quickly cuts the caretaker off and thanks her for the information. But instead of scaring Kevin away, the story only makes him more excited to visit the shed. Since Mary needs to get back to work, she asks Katie to go with her brother. Katie agrees, but only because she wants to record videos of the trip and post them on social media. The two siblings then make their way up the mountain until they finally find the shed. Inside, the place is filled with all kinds of old objects. After searching for a while, Kevin finds a VHS player connected to an old television and puts the tape in. The show introduces Puka, a living puppet who visits the home of a little girl named Sally. Puka asks Sally if he can have some chocolate chip cookies from a jar, but the girl refuses. The puppet keeps insisting and stretches his arm all the way to the highest shelf. But when he tries to grab the jar, he accidentally knocks it onto the floor. The loud noise immediately attracts Sally's mother, who asks what happened. Sally blames the Puka puppet, but by the time her mother looks around, the puppet has disappeared. The woman then scolds her daughter and tells her that puppets can't move on their own. While Kevin continues watching the episode, Mary tries to get an internet connection in the middle of the forest. That's when she runs into a visiting couple named Priya and Rob. The couple is also spending their vacation at the park, so Mary invites them to a small get-together. She hopes their company will cheer Tom up, because ever since losing his job, he has become depressed and withdrawn. He has lost interest in almost everything, and has even started distancing himself from his family. Later, Katie and Kevin return to the cabin, but the boy can't stop thinking about the strange Puka tape. He even draws a picture of the puppet. However, his mother soon interrupts him and calls the family together to watch a movie. Once again, nobody seems very excited about spending time together. Eventually, everyone goes back to their own rooms, leaving Mary feeling even more disappointed about the vacation. In the middle of the night, Kevin hears a strange noise and goes to the living room to see what happened. But when he gets there, there's no one around. Kevin returns to his room, completely unaware that something, or someone, is watching him from the other side of the window. The next morning, the family discovers several empty candy packages scattered across the floor. It looks like someone has eaten all of the candy by themselves. Naturally, Mary, Tom, and Katie suspect Kevin. The boy tries to defend himself, but because of his history of bad behavior at school, nobody believes him. Frustrated, Kevin storms out and heads into the park alone. While walking around, he notices a trail of candy wrappers leading into the woods. As the day goes on, Kevin remains outside by himself. Meanwhile, Mary begins to wonder if she has been too hard on her son. She then asks Tom to go talk to him, thinking it might also help her husband take his mind off losing his job and spend some time with their son. Tom agrees and calls Kevin over to practice throwing a ball. But Kevin is still upset about the candy incident. He insists that he wasn't the one who ate it and tells his father about the trail of wrappers leading toward the shed at the top of the mountain. Kevin asks Tom to go there with him because he suspects the strange events may have something to do with the Puka tape he found. Meanwhile, Katie is recording another video for her social media when the closet door suddenly opens by itself. The girl gets scared and goes to investigate, but all she finds inside is an old rag. She quickly reassures her followers that it was nothing more than a little scare, but behind her, a mysterious figure silently slips through the doorway. Back at the shed, Kevin shows his father the VHS player and the collection of old tapes. Among them is an old movie about space robots. Finally, Kevin puts in the tape containing the first episode of Puka, but this time, something is different. The puppet is no longer standing by the window. It seems to have completely disappeared from the recording. Kevin immediately becomes convinced that Puka has somehow escaped into the real world. He tries to warn his father, insisting that the puppet was the one who ate the candy. But Tom thinks his son is simply getting carried away by an old TV show. He tells Kevin that it's time for them to go back to the cabin. Even so, Kevin is determined to prove that he's telling the truth. When they return, he asks his mother to give his cell phone back. Kevin wants to record evidence that Puka really exists, but Mary believes he's only using the situation as an excuse to get out of his punishment. She leaves the phone on the fireplace mantel and refuses to give it to him. That night, Kevin can't sleep. Even though his mother specifically told him not to, he sneaks over to the fireplace and takes the phone. He then quietly leaves the cabin and hides behind a tree, hoping to record anything strange moving through the forest. For a long time, nothing happens. The forest remains completely still. Just as Kevin is about to give up, Puka suddenly appears right in front of him. The boy is so terrified that he drops the phone and runs all the way back to the cabin, unable to believe what he has just seen. The next morning, Kevin tries to tell Katie about what happened, but she doesn't take him seriously and assumes it's just another one of his stories. Kevin finally loses his patience and accuses his sister of becoming boring. He reminds her that she used to enjoy spending time with him, but now all she seems to care about is impressing her social media followers. After the argument, Kevin leaves the cabin and runs into the park caretaker, who is once again gathering firewood in the forest. With no one else willing to listen, Kevin tells her that he saw Puka the night before. To his surprise, the caretaker believes him. She invites Kevin inside for tea and explains that the puppet may have been brought into the real world by the powers of a mountain fairy. To help him understand what might be happening, she gives Kevin an old book about the fairies that supposedly live in the region. According to the legends, these creatures may be small, but they are incredibly powerful. They are even capable of opening portals between different worlds and distorting reality itself. The caretaker promises to help Kevin prove the truth and lets him keep the book. When Kevin returns home, he immediately starts reading through every page. At the same time, Mary is busy baking a chocolate cake for the get-together she is planning with the neighbors. But Kevin suddenly remembers the episode he watched. Puka seemed obsessed with chocolate. Worried, he tries to warn his mother and tells her to get rid of the cake. However, Mary doesn't take him seriously. Instead, she asks Katie to keep an eye on the house while the adults are gone. As the evening goes on, Mary tries to enjoy herself with Tom and their new friends. Meanwhile, Kevin is busy trying to figure out how to capture Puka. With Katie distracted by her phone and listening to music through her headphones, Kevin manages to sneak away and head toward the neighboring cabin. But when he gets there, he comes face to face with Puka once again. The puppet stretches his arm through the window and tries to grab the chocolate cake. Kevin quickly reaches for it first, but Puka tries to snatch it away. The struggle causes Kevin to drop the cake, sending everything crashing to the floor. When Mary sees her son, she immediately becomes furious. Kevin tries to explain that Puka was about to attack them, but the puppet has already vanished without a trace. Fed up with everything that's been happening, Mary returns to the cabin. She scolds Kevin and then reprimands Katie for not keeping a closer eye on her brother. But Mary is also angry at Tom. Ever since the trip began, he's barely paid any attention to the family and didn't even try to have a conversation with anyone during the get-together. After the argument, Mary locks herself in her room, leaving Kevin to realize that he may have taken things too far. The next morning, Kevin is sitting alone on a swing when the park caretaker approaches him and asks what happened. Kevin tells her about the incident at the neighboring cabin and admits that his family has always treated him like a problem child. He then explains that he was suspended from school after attacking a student who called him a loser in front of everyone. The caretaker understands how he feels, because she was also treated like a problem by other people. Some even thought she was crazy. Still, she encourages Kevin not to give up. She also gives him a walkie-talkie so they can stay in contact while working together to capture Puka. Kevin thanks her and starts walking back to the cabin, but suddenly he feels something touch his shoulder. When he turns around, Puka is standing right behind him. However, the puppet doesn't want to hurt him. He simply wants to talk. Since Puka can't speak, he communicates using cards with written messages. Kevin asks how he escaped from the VHS tape and ended up in the real world. But Puka has no idea what he's talking about. Kevin then explains that Puka is actually a character from a TV show. The puppet doesn't believe him. Convinced that he's a real person, Puka walks away and leaves Kevin a card, saying that he doesn't want to play with him anymore. The strange encounter only leaves Kevin even more confused. When he returns to the cabin, he finds Katie busy with her phone. Even though he knows she probably won't believe him, Kevin tells her everything that happened. This time, however, Katie actually believes him. She shows Kevin a video she recorded earlier, in which Puka can be seen watching her through the doorway. Now convinced that the puppet really exists, Katie decides to take advantage of the situation. She plans to record videos of the real haunting and use them to attract even more followers. The two siblings then head to the shed, believing that the VHS collection might contain a clue that could help them capture Puka. But while searching through the tapes, they find something completely unexpected. One of the VHS tapes is labeled The Kellys, and the cover features a picture of their own family. Completely confused, Kevin and Katie put the tape into the VCR. The recording turns out to be a sitcom starring the Kelly family. Kevin soon realizes that just like Puka, he and his family are actually characters from a TV show who somehow escaped into the real world. Katie thinks the idea is ridiculous, but as they watch more of the recording, she begins to recognize the scenes. Everything shown in the sitcom is based on memories they have actually experienced. Kevin becomes furious. He believes their parents have been hiding the truth from them all along. Katie, however, tells him they need to keep this a secret before anyone else finds out. Kevin agrees and tells his sister to go ahead while he looks for a place to hide the tape. A few minutes later, he decides to hide the VHS inside the lid of a trash can. But just as he does, the park caretaker suddenly appears. Luckily, she doesn't see the tape. Kevin quickly claims that he was only looking for his lost cell phone in the trash. The caretaker believes him and invites him back to her house because she has discovered new information about the mountain fairies. According to her research, a fairy needs a special object to create a portal and bring an imaginary character into the real world. However, the character can be sent back if it comes into contact with the same object that was used to create the portal. In other words, if Puka watches the VHS recording he came from, the fairy's magic will reverse itself and pull him back through the portal. Kevin decides that this is exactly what they need to do. But before he can find Puka, he first needs to confront his parents and find out the truth about his own origins. When Kevin returns to the cabin, Tom gathers the family together to play Monopoly. He wants to make up for the argument from the night before. Mary appreciates the gesture and tries to enjoy the game with the rest of the family. But in the middle of the game, Kevin suddenly asks why his parents have been hiding the truth from them. He tells them that he already knows about the TV show they came from. Mary and Tom have absolutely no idea what he's talking about. Katie quickly tries to smooth things over by claiming that Kevin is simply following a new social media trend about families living inside sitcoms. Luckily, Mary and Tom believe her. After the game, Katie and Kevin leave the cabin, and she scolds her brother for speaking to their parents that way. Kevin defends himself by saying that everyone has always treated him like the problem child. But now he realizes that he may have been created that way for the TV show. Because of this, Kevin resents the fact that his parents have been hiding the truth from him and making him believe that his behavior was entirely his own choice. He even starts to believe that his father became depressed because he had a son who was constantly disappointing him. Katie comforts her brother and reminds him that their parents' problems aren't his fault. Eventually, the two siblings come to an understanding. Katie then shows Kevin a webpage revealing that The Kellys was canceled after only one season. She believes their parents don't remember anything about their past, which means the two siblings will have to figure out how their family ended up in the real world on their own. Kevin agrees. But first, they need to find Puka and send him back into his VHS tape. Kevin contacts the park caretaker, and the two siblings go to her house to ask for help. The caretaker is already prepared for their plan. She has even baked another chocolate cake to use as bait. She places the cake outside and waits with the kids. Before long, Puka appears. The puppet slowly moves toward the cake, and since Kevin knows Puka won't hurt him, the boy approaches and tells him the whole truth. Puka still can't believe that he's a fictional character, so Kevin shows him the VHS tape and the cover of the TV show he came from. He then invites Puka to return to the shed with them and watch the tape together. That way, the puppet can see for himself whether Kevin is telling the truth. Puka agrees. To avoid frightening the other visitors at the park, the caretaker hides him inside a stroller. The group eventually reaches the shed, and Kevin puts the VHS tape into the player. But just as the episode begins, strange magic starts to appear on the television. As Puka watches the show, he slowly regains his memories. He finally realizes that Kevin had been telling the truth all along. A portal then begins to open, pulling Puka back into the VHS tape. Before he disappears, the puppet hands Kevin one final card, thanking him for bringing him home. Unfortunately, the moment Puka returns to the tape, the caretaker grabs a hammer and destroys the recording. She does this to prevent the fairies from bringing Puka back into the real world. As a result, Puka is destroyed along with the VHS tape. Kevin and Katie immediately realize that if the caretaker discovers the truth about them, the Kelly family could suffer the same fate. The two siblings rush back to the cabin and tell their mother everything that happened. As expected, Mary doesn't believe them. Kevin then runs to the trash can to retrieve the VHS tape and prove that they're telling the truth. But the tape has mysteriously disappeared. Then the caretaker suddenly appears beside him, holding the VHS tape in her hands. She has already figured everything out. The woman accuses Kevin of lying and explains that the Kelly family was also brought into the real world by the fairies. Kevin insists that he had no idea this was the truth until now. The caretaker then makes them an offer. If the Kelly family agrees to return to the VHS tape, she promises to spare them. However, after seeing what the caretaker did to Puka, Kevin runs back to the cabin and tells Katie that she has found the tape. Tom soon joins them, and the two siblings try to convince their parents that the VHS tape is real. They explain that if the family doesn't do something, the caretaker will force them back inside it and destroy them. Mary is already tired of hearing about the tape and tells Tom to talk to the children before they completely lose touch with reality. But Tom simply says that Mary is overreacting. He would rather go back to the bedroom than waste time playing along with the kids' stories. The argument quickly gets worse. Mary accuses Tom of using his depression as an excuse to stop taking care of his family. Tom fires back that there's nothing he can do to change his children, especially Kevin, who has always been difficult to deal with. Those words hurt Kevin deeply. The boy locks himself in his room, where he finds the walkie-talkie the caretaker gave him. Realizing that trying to convince his parents is pointless, Kevin contacts the caretaker and proposes a deal that could resolve everything once and for all. Meanwhile, Tom and Mary continue arguing until Katie finally tells them both to calm down. She then shows them the same image she found online. The moment they see the photo from the TV show, their memories begin to come flooding back. They finally realize that Kevin had been telling the truth all along. Katie asks how they ended up in the real world, but Mary can only remember meeting a strange man who took them in while they were in the forest. After that, the family moved to Dublin and began living an ordinary life. Over time, they gradually forgot where they had really come from. Tom also remembers that in the show, his character was always happy. Even when something went wrong, everything would eventually work out by the end of the episode. He finally realizes that his depression may be a reaction to living in the real world. Here, problems don't always disappear before the day is over, and life doesn't always come with a happy ending. Now that the family remembers the truth, they go to talk to Kevin, but his room is empty and the windows are wide open. Fearing that the caretaker may have captured him, Mary, Tom, and Katie rush out into the park to look for him. They eventually find Kevin heading toward the shed. Tom asks what he's planning to do, and Kevin reveals that he has made a deal with the caretaker. He plans to return to the VHS tape alone. In exchange, his family will be spared. Kevin believes that without him around, his parents and sister will finally be able to live in peace, and his father won't have to be depressed anymore. Upon hearing this, Tom hugs his son and apologizes for not being the father Kevin deserved. He promises that things will be different from now on. No matter what happens, they'll face every problem together. The family finally puts their differences aside and shares a hug. Tom then calls everyone together so they can say goodbye to Maloney Park. But as they try to leave, they discover that the caretaker has blocked the gates with firewood and large pieces of timber. Now their only option is to confront her. Mary decides to use her mediation skills and try to reach an agreement. The family goes to the caretaker's house where the woman is already waiting for them. She invites them inside for tea and chocolate cake. Once everyone is seated at the table, Mary asks the caretaker to hand over the VHS tape. She explains that the family has decided to stay in the real world, but the caretaker refuses. She insists that they are all fictional characters and that their presence in the real world violates the laws of nature. She goes even further and says that she can't allow freaks like them to spread throughout the real world. Mary is deeply offended. She abandons the negotiations and threatens to attack the caretaker if she continues insulting her family. But the woman remains completely unfazed. She says Mary won't be able to do anything after drinking the special tea she prepared. A moment later, Mary, Tom, and Katie suddenly fall into a deep sleep. Kevin, however, remains standing because he never drank the tea. The caretaker immediately chases after him, but Kevin manages to dodge her and escape back to the cabin with the VHS tape. A short time later, Mary, Tom, and Katie wake up tied to the table. The caretaker is nowhere to be seen, so Mary tells Katie to use her cell phone to call for help. Even though she's tied up, Katie manages to pull the phone out of her pocket. But instead of calling the police, she decides to ask her social media followers for help. The caretaker quickly discovers what she's doing and smashes the phone. She then tells them that they'll soon disappear from the real world forever. Back at the cabin, Kevin desperately tries to figure out how to save his family. Eventually, he contacts the caretaker through the walkie-talkie. Kevin proposes another deal. He promises to hand over the VHS tape if she agrees not to destroy the recording. The caretaker gives him her word and arranges to meet him at the shed on top of the mountain. Kevin agrees. When he arrives, he finds his parents and sister tied up in front of the television, with a chair waiting for him. Without putting up a fight, Kevin hands over the copy of the tape and sits down beside his family. The caretaker promises that she will send them all back to their original world. But the moment she puts the tape into the VCR, something goes wrong. Instead of showing an episode of The Kellys, the television begins playing the old movie about space robots. A moment later, the robot begins emerging from inside the television. That's when the caretaker realizes that Kevin switched the tapes. While the robot keeps her distracted, Kevin helps his family escape from their restraints. Once everyone is free, Mary asks what they're supposed to do next. Kevin then tells the robot to watch the television so it can return to its own world, just like Puka did. The robot begins getting pulled back into the VHS tape, but it doesn't go alone. The robot grabs the caretaker and pulls her into the tape with it. With the caretaker gone, the Kelly family is finally safe. Everyone congratulates Kevin for his clever plan and for managing to save them all. After this unforgettable vacation, the family leaves Maloney Park and prepares to return to the real world. Whether the Kelly family was truly brought there by the mountain fairies remains a mystery.